Why you feel exhausted even when you did nothing. You need to stop assuming that exhaustion only comes from visible effort. Because a lot of the time, you wake up tired, go through the day feeling heavy, and then tell yourself a simple story. I didn't even do much today, so why do I feel like this? That sentence sounds logical, but it misses something important. Your body doesn't only track what you do externally. It tracks what you survive internally. Stress, attention, emotional tension, and mental processing all consume energy. Even if you stayed in bed all day, your system might still be working overtime. Let's break this down in a way that actually makes sense. Your body is always running background processes. Think of your body like a phone. Even when you're not using it, apps are still running. Syncing data, updating systems, managing notifications, tracking location, maintaining memory processes. Now translate that into human biology. Your body is constantly managing breathing, heart rate, hormone regulation, stress response systems, temperature control, immune activity, emotional processing. None of this pauses just because your external life is quiet. So when you say, "I did nothing today," your body is still doing everything required to keep you stable. That alone costs energy. Mental work is still work, even if no one sees it. Here's where most people misunderstand themselves. You can sit in one place all day and still be mentally exhausted if your brain is processing pressure. For example, replaying conversations from yesterday, worrying about tomorrow, overthinking decisions, holding unresolved emotions, scrolling endlessly to escape discomfort. None of this looks like work, but neurologically it is. Your brain is constantly simulating scenarios, predicting outcomes, and trying to reduce uncertainty. That process uses glucose, attention, and emotional energy. So when you feel tired after a doing nothing day, what often happened is this. You didn't rest. You just didn't move externally. There's a difference. Stress doesn't need action to exist. You don't need a crisis to feel stressed. Your nervous system reacts to unfinished tasks, unclear expectations, social pressure, internal self-criticism, emotional suppression. Even if nothing is happening outside, something can still be open inside you, and your brain treats open loops like unfinished work. Example, you tell yourself, "I'll deal with it later," but your mind doesn't fully close that file. It keeps it partially active in the background. Multiply that by 10 to 20 unresolved thoughts, and your system starts feeling heavy without you realizing why. That heaviness is not random. It's accumulation. Why rest sometimes doesn't feel like rest. You might notice something strange. You rest, but you don't feel restored. That usually happens when your environment is still stimulating your nervous system. For example, scrolling on your phone for hours, switching between content constantly, staying in bright, noisy environments, consuming information without processing it. Your body is physically still, but your brain is not in recovery mode. Real rest requires a drop in stimulation, not just a break from physical activity. If your nervous system stays activated, your body never fully switches into repair mode. That's why you can spend a whole day resting and still feel drained. Your energy is not just about effort, it's about load. Here's a shift that changes how you understand yourself. Your energy is not only determined by what you do, it's determined by what you carry. Two people can do the same tasks and feel completely different afterward. Why? Because one is carrying emotional tension, lack of sleep, unresolved stress, mental clutter, while the other is relatively regulated. So when you compare your productivity or energy to someone else, you're missing invisible variables. You are not seeing their internal load, and they are not seeing yours. The real reason you feel lazy sometimes, there's a point where your system stops pushing forward. Not because you are undisciplined, but because your body is protecting itself from overload. This can feel like procrastination, avoidance, numbness, lack of motivation. But underneath it, your nervous system is essentially saying, "I cannot process more input right now." So it slows you down. This is not a character flaw. It is a regulatory response. The problem is that most people misinterpret this signal and respond with self-criticism, which adds even more internal stress. That creates a loop. Tired system, reduced output self-judgment. Self-judgment, more stress, deeper fatigue, and nothing actually gets resolved. What this means for you practically, if you want to understand yourself more clearly, stop asking only, "What did I do today?" Start asking, what did I carry today? That includes emotional weight, mental processing, stress levels, attention fragmentation, unresolved thoughts. Because your experience of exhaustion is often not about activity. It's about accumulated internal load that never got a chance to reset. The shift that changes everything. Once you see this clearly, something important happens. You stop assuming your tiredness is a personal failure, and you start seeing it as information. Not, I'm lazy, but my system is overloaded. Not, I did nothing today, so I shouldn't feel this way. But my internal processes didn't get a chance to shut down properly. That shift alone changes how you respond to yourself and how you recover going forward. Your body is not your enemy. Understanding the signals you've been ignoring for years. At some point, you start realizing something uncomfortable. You are not randomly breaking down. There is a pattern. Your body has been trying to communicate with you for a long time, but you were trained, directly or indirectly, to override it. Push through. Ignore it. Stay productive. Don't slow down. Deal with it later. So you did, and now the signals feel louder, more confusing, and harder to ignore. But nothing about this is sudden. It's accumulated. Your body doesn't use language. IT uses signals. Your body doesn't explain itself like a person would. It doesn't say, I am stressed because of unresolved emotional pressure. Instead, it sends fatigue, tension in your shoulders, tight chest, irritability, brain fog, disrupted sleep, low motivation. These are not random symptoms. They are outputs of a system trying to rebalance itself. The problem is, most people try to interpret these signals as personal flaws instead of feedback. So instead of listening, they judge. Instead of adjusting, they suppress. Why ignoring signals feels normal at first. When you first start ignoring your body, nothing dramatic happens. You stay functional. You still work. You still study. You still meet expectations. This creates a dangerous assumption. I can ignore this and I'll be fine. And for a while, you are fine. Because your body compensates. It increases stress hormones to keep you alert. It reallocates energy from recovery to performance. It suppresses fatigue signals temporarily. This is why high-functioning stress exists. You don't feel the full cost immediately. You feel it later. The body always keeps the receipt. Every time you override a signal, your body doesn't erase it. It stores it, not emotionally in a poetic sense, but physiologically. Nervous system activation, muscle tension patterns, hormonal imbalances, sleep disruption cycles. Over time, this becomes your new normal. So you stop noticing how tense you are, because tension becomes baseline. You stop noticing how tired you are, because tired becomes baseline. This is how people adapt to dysfunction without realizing it. Why you start misreading yourself. Once your baseline shifts, your interpretation of yourself changes. You stop thinking, I am overwhelmed, and start thinking, I am just like this. This is where identity confusion begins. Because you are no longer reacting to short-term stress. You are living inside a long-term adaptation state. That state changes. Your patience, your emotional range, your motivation, your clarity, your sense of self. And because it feels stable, you assume it is permanent. It is not. The body doesn't break suddenly. IT reaches limits gradually. Breakdown rarely feels like a single moment. It feels like, I can't focus like I used to. Everything feels heavier now. Even simple tasks feel difficult. I'm always tired, even after rest. What you are experiencing is not a sudden failure. It is a system reaching its compensation limit. Your body has been adjusting in the background for a long time. Now it can't adjust further without forcing a reset. That's why things feel worse all at once. But the cause wasn't sudden. The awareness is. Why self-blame makes everything worse. When people start noticing these changes, they often respond emotionally. I'm lazy. I lost discipline. Something is wrong with me. But self-blame adds another layer of stress on top of an already overloaded system. So now your body is dealing with original stress, accumulated fatigue, emotional pressure from self-judgment. This is where things spiral, not because you are weak, but because the system is being asked to regulate too many pressures at once. What your body actually needs from you. Your body is not asking you to become perfect. It is asking for reduced overload, clearer recovery cycles, fewer constant stress inputs, moments where nothing is demanded of it, not productivity fixes, Regulation conditions. Small changes matter more than big interventions. Stopping constant stimulation. Improving sleep consistency. Reducing mental clutter. Allowing real downtime. Because your system doesn't respond to intensity. It responds to consistency. The shift that changes your relationship with yourself. Once you understand this, something subtle changes. You stop seeing your body as something to fight and start seeing it as something you have been miscommunicating with. Your exhaustion is no longer proof of failure. It becomes a map, a record of how much pressure has been accumulating without release. And once you can see the pattern clearly, you are no longer guessing what is wrong. You are reading what has been happening all along. The hidden system running you in the background. How homeostasis actually shapes your daily life. You don't experience your body directly. You experience the result of millions of adjustments happening underneath your awareness. And the system responsible for most of that stability is something you rarely think about, but constantly depend on: homeostasis. In simple terms, it is your body's way of keeping you stable enough to function. Not perfect, not optimized, just stable enough to keep you alive and moving. Your body is constantly correcting imbalances. Right now, your body is adjusting things you are not consciously aware of. Temperature, blood sugar, hydration levels, oxygen supply, heart rate, stress hormones. These are not fixed states. They are constantly shifting. So your body is constantly asking one question in the background: are we still within a safe range? If the answer is no, it responds immediately. Not tomorrow, not after permission. Immediately. That is the part most people miss. You are not a static system. You are a constantly adjusting one. Why you don't notice most of this happening? The reason you feel normal most of the time is not because nothing is happening. It's because the system is working correctly. When homeostasis is functioning well, the adjustments are invisible. For example, you eat sugar, insulin adjusts it. You get cold, your body generates heat. You get stressed, hormones stabilize afterward. You don't feel the correction process. You only feel the before and after. That's why the body feels silent when it is healthy. Silence is not absence of activity. It is successful regulation. When the system starts struggling, problems start when the system is constantly forced to correct too many imbalances at once. Think of it like driving on a road with constant small obstacles. Traffic, noise, distractions, sudden stops. You can handle it for a while, but over time, your attention gets drained. The same thing happens internally. If your body is constantly managing lack of sleep, emotional stress, overstimulation, irregular routines, poor recovery, then homeostasis is no longer in a light adjustment state. It becomes a constant recovery state. That is where fatigue comes from, not from one event, from continuous correction. Why stress feels like it never turns off? A major misunderstanding is this. People think stress only exists during stressful events. But biologically, stress is a system state. Once activated, it doesn't automatically shut off just because the event ended. Example, you have a difficult conversation. Even after it ends, your heart rate stays slightly elevated. Your thoughts replay the situation. Your muscles remain tense. Your nervous system stays alert. If this happens repeatedly, your baseline shifts. You are no longer returning to normal. You are living in a slightly activated state as default. The nervous system decides how life feels. Two people can experience the same situation and feel completely different. Not because reality is different, but because their nervous systems are operating at different levels of load. A regulated system processes stress and returns to calm, recovers quickly, maintains emotional flexibility. An overloaded system stays reactive, interprets neutral things as stress, struggles to recover fully. This is why life can feel heavier, even when nothing external has changed. The environment is the same. The internal system is not. Why you can't think your way out of it. This is where many people get stuck. They try to fix a biological system using purely mental effort. Positive thinking, motivation, discipline, self-talk. But homeostasis doesn't respond to thoughts alone. It responds to conditions: sleep quality, nutrition, recovery time, stimulation levels, emotional load. This is why you can understand everything intellectually and still feel stuck physically. Insight alone doesn't reset the system. Regulation does. What balance actually looks like in real life. Balance is not a constant calm state. It is a cycle. Stress enters. System responds. Recovery happens. Stability returns. Stress enters again. Healthy systems complete the cycle. Unhealthy systems get stuck in the middle. Constant activation. Incomplete recovery. Repeated overload. So the goal is not to eliminate stress. The goal is to complete the cycle properly. Stress response, recovery, reset. Without recovery, the system never closes the loop. The real problem is not weakness. IT is overload without reset. When people feel broken, what is often happening is not damage. It is accumulation without reset points. Your body was designed for bursts of stress, followed by recovery, not continuous stimulation, continuous pressure, continuous mental load. When reset is missing, even small tasks start to feel heavy, not because they are difficult, but because your system is already near capacity. The shift that makes this useful. Once you understand homeostasis clearly, your perspective changes. You stop asking, "Why can't I handle this?" and start asking, "What is keeping my system from resetting?" That question leads to practical answers. Sleep, recovery, reduced overload, emotional processing, environmental changes. Not because those are self-care tips, but because they are system requirements. You are not trying to become stronger in isolation. You are trying to restore a system that was built to recover, not continuously endure. When motivation fails, what your body is trying to tell you about burnout and overload. There's a point where effort stops working. You try to push yourself like before. Make new plans. Set new goals. Use discipline again. Promise yourself you'll fix it tomorrow. But something is different now. The push doesn't carry you forward the same way. And instead of feeling motivated, you feel resistance. That resistance is not random. It is a signal. Motivation is not a constant system. Most people treat motivation like it should always be available. But motivation is not a stable resource. It depends on conditions, energy availability, emotional load, stress levels, clarity of goals, recovery status. When your internal system is overloaded, motivation becomes inconsistent or disappears completely. Not because you lost it, but because the system supporting it is depleted. Burnout does not feel like dramatic collapse at first. Burnout is not always a sudden breakdown. It usually starts quietly. Tasks feel heavier than usual. Small decisions take longer. Focus becomes unstable. Rest doesn't feel restorative. You don't immediately realize something is wrong. You just adjust your expectations. You lower your pace without noticing. Then one day, even basic effort feels difficult. That is when people assume, "I became lazy." But what actually happened is, your system shifted into protection mode. Your body does not lose motivation. IT removes access to it. This is a critical distinction. Motivation is not gone. It is inaccessible. When the system detects overload, it prioritizes energy conservation, stability, reduced stimulation. So it reduces output that is not necessary for immediate survival. That includes ambition, creative drive, emotional engagement, long-term planning energy. From the outside, it looks like procrastination. Internally, it is resource management. Why everything starts feeling heavy. When overload continues, your perception of effort changes. Tasks that used to feel simple now feel like too many steps, too many decisions, too much friction. This is not because tasks became harder. It is because your system has less available capacity. Imagine trying to run multiple programs on a device with low battery and high background usage. Everything slows down, not because the programs changed, but because resources are limited. Emotional numbness is also a protective response. At a certain point, you may stop feeling strongly about things. This can feel like lack of interest, disconnection, emotional flatness. I don't care anymore state. But this is often not emotional loss. It is emotional regulation under pressure. When feeling too much becomes unsustainable, the system reduces intensity. It is trying to prevent overload by lowering emotional output. That's why even positive things don't feel exciting anymore. Why rest stopped working. One of the most confusing experiences is this. You rest, but nothing changes. This happens when rest is no longer deep enough to reset the system. If your recovery is interrupted by stimulation, mixed with stress, like constant phone use, inconsistent in timing, then your system never fully exits activation mode. So you stay in a loop. Tired rest, still tired, push more tired. This is not failure of effort. It is failure of reset. What your body is actually communicating here. When motivation collapses, your body is not saying, "Stop trying to improve." It is saying, "I cannot support output at this level without recovery." So instead of asking, "How do I force myself to do more?" a more accurate question is, "What is draining my system faster than I can restore it?" Because until that imbalance is addressed, effort will feel increasingly expensive. The real turning point. Burnout is often misunderstood as an endpoint, but it is actually feedback. It shows you where your limits were exceeded, where recovery was missing, where pressure accumulated silently. And most importantly, it reveals that performance is not just effort-based. It is system-based. If the system is overloaded, even strong motivation cannot override it for long. So the real solution is not to push harder. It is to restore capacity first. You are not lazy. How nervous system overload gets misread as personal failure. At some point, you stop asking what is happening to your body and start asking what is wrong with your character. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because once you label your experience as laziness, you stop looking for systems. You start attacking yourself instead of understanding what is happening. Laziness is not a biological state. Your body does not contain a setting called lazy. What people call laziness is usually a mismatch between demand, what you think you should do, capacity, what your system can actually support. When capacity is low, output drops. That drop is then misinterpreted as a personality flaw. But your nervous system is not evaluating your goals. It is evaluating your load. Overload creates behavior that looks like avoidance. When your system is overwhelmed, it reduces input. This can look like procrastination, distraction, indecision, emotional withdrawal, task avoidance. From the outside, it looks like resistance. Internally, it is protection. Your brain is trying to prevent further strain on an already overloaded system. So it avoids additional demands. Not because you don't care, but because you are already near capacity. Why you still feel guilty even when you're tired. This is where the conflict begins. Part of you is exhausted. Another part of you is still holding expectations. So you enter a loop. You feel tired. You don't act. You feel guilty. Guilt increases stress. Stress reduces capacity further. Now you are not just tired. You are tired plus self-pressured. And that combination makes everything feel worse. Your identity starts forming around your lowest energy state. When this pattern continues, something dangerous happens. You start defining yourself based on how you function during overload. Not how you function when rested. Not how you function when regulated. But how you function when depleted. So thoughts like, "I always procrastinate. I never follow through. I'm not disciplined," start feeling true. But they are actually descriptions of a temporary system state, not a permanent identity. Why discipline breaks under system load? People often assume disciplined individuals are simply more mentally strong. But discipline is not a fixed trait. It depends on energy availability, emotional stability, sleep quality, stress load, cognitive bandwidth. When those variables are stable, discipline feels easy. When they are unstable, even simple discipline collapses. Not because the person changed, but because the system changed. The cost of constant self-blame. Self-blame feels like accountability, but it often functions as additional load. When you repeatedly tell yourself, "I should be better. I'm wasting time. I'm not doing enough," you are not solving the energy problem. You are increasing internal pressure on a system that is already struggling. So instead of recovery, you get compounding stress. And compounding stress reduces performance further. Why you keep trying the same approach and getting the same result? Most people respond to low output with more pressure, stricter schedules, harsher self-talk, higher expectations, more forcing. But if the issue is system overload, pressure is not the solution. Pressure is what created the overload. So the system responds the only way it can. It slows down even more. This is not rebellion. It is limitation. What is actually happening under the surface? When you feel lazy, what is often happening is your nervous system is protecting energy. Your brain is reducing stimulation. Your body is prioritizing recovery over output. Your emotional system is limiting input. In other words, your system is trying to stabilize itself with the resources it has. It is not refusing life. It is trying to manage it. The shift that breaks the cycle. The moment you stop calling it laziness, something changes. You stop asking, "Why can't I just do it?" and start asking, "What condition would make this easier for my system?" That question leads you away from identity and toward environment, recovery, and load management. And that is where real change becomes possible. Because you cannot shame a system into stability, but you can redesign the conditions it operates in. How your environment is rewriting your brain without your permission. At this point, you might start realizing something uncomfortable. A lot of what you thought was personal discipline or lack of discipline is actually shaped by what you are exposed to every day. Your environment is not just a background setting. It is actively shaping your nervous system. Without asking you, without your awareness, your brain adapts to what it is exposed to repeatedly. Your nervous system is not fixed. It learns through repetition. So whatever you repeatedly experience becomes your baseline. For example, constant notifications, shorter attention span; chaotic schedule, higher baseline stress; lack of sleep, lower emotional tolerance; social pressure, increased anxiety sensitivity. Over time, your system stops treating these as external conditions. It starts treating them as normal. That is how adaptation works. Why your phone is not just a device. IT is an environment. Most people underestimate this. Your phone is not just something you use. It is something you live inside of. Every scroll trains your brain. New stimulus every few seconds. Rapid context switching. Constant novelty. No sustained attention requirement. Over time, this reshapes your attention system. So when you try to sit still and focus on one thing, it feels uncomfortable. Not because you are broken, but because your nervous system has been conditioned for constant input. Your environment sets your baseline stress level. Think about this carefully. You do not start your day at zero. You start your day at the level your environment has trained you to operate at. If your environment is noisy, fast-paced, emotionally demanding, overstimulating, your baseline stress stays elevated. So even small problems feel big, because your system is already partially activated before anything even happens. Why change feels harder than it should? When people try to improve their lives, they usually focus on motivation, discipline, mindset, but they ignore the system they are operating inside. So they try to change behavior in an environment that constantly reinforces the old behavior. That creates friction. For example, trying to focus while surrounded by constant distractions, trying to rest while consuming endless content, trying to be calm in a chaotic routine, trying to think clearly in overstimulation. Your behavior is not just a choice. It is a response to conditions. You don't fail your environment, you adapt to it. This is a key shift. If you stay in a high distraction environment, you will become distracted. If you stay in a high stress environment, you will become stressed. If you stay in a low recovery environment, you will become fatigued. Not because of weakness, but because adaptation is automatic. Your system is always adjusting to what it is repeatedly exposed to. The problem is not that you are adapting. The problem is what you are adapting to. Why willpower breaks under environmental pressure. Willpower is not designed to fight constant environmental influence. It is designed for short-term decisions. So when your environment pushes you in one direction all day, distraction, stimulation, stress, urgency, your willpower eventually loses consistency. Not because it is weak, but because it is constantly outnumbered. You are trying to use a small internal resource to fight a large external system. That imbalance always collapses eventually. The real question is not, how do I change? It is, what is shaping me right now without me realizing it? Because if your environment is unchanged, your behavior will eventually return to the same patterns. This is why people relapse into old habits even after motivation spikes. They changed intention, but not conditions. What this means in real life. If you feel stuck, the solution is rarely more effort. It is usually reducing unnecessary input, creating recovery space, simplifying your environment, limiting constant stimulation, designing clearer boundaries around attention. Not because these are productivity tricks, but because your nervous system responds to structure, not pressure. The shift that makes this real. Once you understand this, you stop trying to fix yourself in isolation and start observing what you consume daily, what you repeat daily, what you are surrounded by daily. Because those inputs are slowly shaping your outputs. You are not just living in your environment. Your environment is also living inside your behavior. The breaking point What happens when your body stops compensating? There is a point where your system stops adapting, not because it is weak, but because it has nothing left to redistribute. For a long time, your body has been doing quiet damage control, adjusting stress levels, compensating for lack of sleep, stabilizing emotions under pressure, maintaining function despite overload. You don't feel most of this happening because compensation hides the cost. Until it doesn't. The shift from compensation to collapse is gradual, not sudden. People imagine breaking points as dramatic events, but most of the time, it is a slow transition. You start noticing. Tasks feel unusually heavy. Recovery takes longer than before. Emotional reactions become unpredictable. Motivation stops returning after rest. At first, you adapt again. You lower expectations. You reduce output. You tell yourself you just need a break. But the system doesn't fully reset. It just continues operating at reduced capacity. When the system can no longer reduce anything else, your body always tries to maintain balance by adjusting output. When overloaded, it reduces focus, motivation, emotional intensity, physical energy, cognitive speed. But there is a limit to how much can be reduced. Eventually, there is nothing left to sacrifice without affecting basic functioning. That is where breakdown begins to feel real, not as a dramatic event, but as inability. Why everything starts feeling too much. At this stage, even simple actions feel disproportionately difficult, not because they changed, but because your internal capacity has shrunk. So normal life starts feeling like too many decisions, too many steps, too much noise, too many demands. Your nervous system is no longer filtering efficiently. Everything feels equally important. That is what overload does. It removes prioritization. Emotional instability is a signal of system limits. When the system is overloaded, emotional regulation becomes unstable. You might notice sudden irritation over small things, emotional numbness alternating with overwhelm, low tolerance for stress, unpredictable reactions. This is not personality change. It is reduced regulation capacity. Your brain is prioritizing survival-level stability, not emotional refinement. So reactions become less filtered, more direct, less controlled. Why rest no longer feels effective at this stage. One of the most confusing experiences is this. You try to rest, but you don't feel restored. This happens because the system is no longer just tired. It is depleted across multiple layers. Sleep debt, emotional load, cognitive fatigue, nervous system activation. Rest now requires more than time. It requires actual reduction of input and pressure. If life continues at the same intensity, rest becomes maintenance, not recovery. The moment you start realizing something is wrong, the breaking point is often not dramatic. It is realization. You start noticing, I'm not functioning like I used to. Even simple things feel hard now. I can't recover the same way anymore. This is where confusion begins, because nothing external clearly explains the internal change. So people often turn inward with blame. But what is happening is not moral decline. It is system exhaustion reaching visibility. Why people misread this moment as personal failure. At this stage, most people interpret collapse through identity. I lost discipline. I became lazy. I am not capable anymore. But these interpretations miss the structure underneath. A system that has been compensating for too long eventually stops being able to compensate. Not because it changed character, but because it exceeded capacity. The turning point in understanding. If you understand this correctly, the breaking point stops being a personal failure. It becomes a clear signal. The system can no longer maintain output under current conditions. And that realization shifts the direction of response entirely. Instead of asking, what is wrong with me? You begin asking, what has been sustained for too long without recovery? That question marks the beginning of actual recovery. From confusion to clarity, rebuilding trust with your body and learning to listen again. After everything collapses, something quiet happens. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, your relationship with yourself changes. Because once you've gone through overload, burnout, or breakdown, you can't go back to the old way of pushing without awareness. You've seen the cost. Now the question is not how to force yourself again. The question is how to rebuild a system that can actually sustain you. You don't fix your body, you reconnect with it. A lot of people approach recovery like repair. I need to fix myself. But your body is not broken in the mechanical sense. It is disconnected from balance due to prolonged overload. So the goal is not to force it into performance. The goal is to restore communication. That means noticing signals again, responding earlier, reducing unnecessary pressure, allowing recovery without guilt. This is not improvement through force. It is restoration through awareness. The first step is reducing noise, not adding discipline. When people try to recover, they often add structure, strict routines, productivity systems, new goals. But if your system is already overloaded, more structure becomes more pressure. So the first real step is simpler than people expect. Reduce input. That means less stimulation, fewer demands, fewer open mental loops, less constant engagement with everything at once. Because a stressed system cannot reorganize itself under continuous input, it needs space to stabilize first. You start learning what normal actually feels like again. When you are overloaded for a long time, your baseline becomes distorted. You forget what clear thinking feels like, stable energy feels like, emotional neutrality feels like. So recovery is not just improvement, it is recalibration. You begin noticing small changes. Mornings feel slightly lighter. Focus lasts a little longer. Emotional reactions are less intense. Rest starts to feel effective again. These are not dramatic shifts, but they are signs that regulation is returning. Trust is rebuilt through consistency, not intensity. You don't regain trust in your body by forcing big changes. You regain it by proving safety repeatedly. For example, sleeping consistently for several days, reducing overstimulation gradually, respecting fatigue earlier instead of later, stopping before complete exhaustion. Each small correction tells your system, I'm not going to ignore you anymore. Over time, the nervous system stops staying in constant defense mode. Why slow progress is actually stability returning. When people start recovering, they often feel frustrated. I'm still not where I used to be. But that comparison misses the point. You are not rebuilding performance first. You are rebuilding stability first. Performance comes after stability. So slow improvement is not failure. It is the system slowly regaining capacity without being forced into collapse again. The new relationship with your body. At this stage, something changes internally. You stop treating your body like a tool you command, and start treating it like a system you collaborate with. That means listening before pushing, adjusting instead of forcing, recovering instead of overriding, responding instead of ignoring. This is not softness. It is precision, because a regulated system is far more reliable than a constantly pressured one. What clarity actually looks like. Clarity is not a perfect life. It is a readable one. You can understand why you feel a certain way, what is draining you, what restores you, what needs to change in your environment. Confusion decreases not because life becomes easy, but because you stop fighting signals and start interpreting them correctly. The final shift, the deepest transformation is this. You stop asking your body to prove itself through performance and start learning to maintain it through awareness. Not because you are trying to become better, but because you finally understand the system you are living in. And once you understand it clearly, you can no longer ignore it the same way again. What you were really experiencing all along. If you look back at everything now, the pattern becomes clearer. What you called laziness, lack of discipline, inconsistency, overthinking, burnout, emotional numbness, was never a set of separate problems. It was one system speaking in different forms. A system trying to stay stable under pressure it was never designed to hold continuously. You were not breaking. You were adapting beyond capacity. Most of your struggles were not failures of character. They were signs of adaptation. Your body and mind were constantly trying to adjust to overload, stimulation, emotional pressure, lack of recovery, environmental influence, unresolved mental loops. And adaptation always has a cost. When the cost becomes too high, performance drops. Not because you are incapable, but because the system is protecting itself. The real issue was never doing enough. It was never about trying harder. In most cases, you were already trying enough. The real issue was too little recovery, too much input, too little silence, too much internal pressure, too much accumulated stress without release. You were not missing effort. You were missing balance. Your body was always communicating. You just learned to override it. Every stage of this experience had signals. Early fatigue, mental fog, emotional irritation, motivation drops, shutdown periods. But most people are taught, directly or indirectly, to override these signals. So you continued, until the system eventually stopped compensating, not as punishment, as limitation. The turning point is not understanding more. IT is respecting what you already know. You don't need more information at this stage. You need a different relationship with what you already feel. Because most people already sense when they are overwhelmed, when they need rest, when they are pushing too far, when something is off internally. The challenge is not awareness. It is response. You don't need to control everything. You need to rebalance your inputs. Life does not become easier by forcing more control over yourself. It becomes clearer when you reduce unnecessary load. Less constant stimulation, more recovery space, fewer mental loops, more stable routines, more respect for limits, not as restriction, but as regulation. The final understanding. If there is one thing to take from everything you've read, it is this. You are not a broken system trying to function. You are a system that has been functioning under conditions it was not meant to sustain indefinitely. And now that you can see that clearly, the path forward is no longer confusion. It is adjustment, not perfection, not constant optimization, just steady, intelligent balance. That is what your body has been trying to return to all along.